hospital. And they
That's
say he's
wonderful.
super accurate. If they're going to do this hip surgery or whatever, he has all the right stuff there laid out perfectly, everything's sterilized, and he can set up an operating room better than anybody else can.
That's wonderful. Actually, we've seen a lot of our children with autism, being a very good cook or chefs,
That's right.
because they are so meticulous and they like to follow the routine.
Well,
And
it's important on something like setting up medical instruments to do it right.
absolutely.
Or quality assurance. We're making all these vaccines right now, and we have, and every different countries have to make them very quickly. And one of the things that's really important is what's called quality control.
Absolutely.
I was just reading about the Chinese vaccine. It's a killed virus. Well, you have to have very good quality control to make sure the right amount of chemicals is mixed with that you are sourcing those chemicals from a place, if you do the right quality control, it'd be a really good vaccine.
Yeah.
But that requires extremely precise quality control.
Absolutely.
And there'd be people in a factory that might get mad at the autistic person. But the thing is that quality control for a product like a vaccine is just so important.
Absolutely.
It has to be manufactured absolutely correctly. It doesn't matter whose vaccine it is.
Absolutely.
And there's already been some problems with rushing where some purchasing of chemicals was wrong on one of the vaccines. We'll leave out which one it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a quality control mistake.
So how is pandemic been in you? Like your routine has been?
Well, we are getting our hospital right here is just vaccinated vaccinating our medical workers right now. And then everybody around the world agrees that hospital people and doctors and nurses should get it first. And then we're giving it to our old people in the nursing homes. And then each state after that makes up their own rules, and it's going to vary a lot. Like if I lived in the United Kingdom, because of my age, I'd be the third group to be vaccinated. Now, right here in Colorado, and I agree with this, that teachers of young children should go in the vaccination line before I go in the vaccination line.
I agree.
We have got to get these kids back into the classroom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm with you on that. I'm a parent myself, and I'm just waiting when my child can go back to school. Kids are struggling.
I'm very concerned about this. About 2 weeks ago, I talked to a teacher for our second grade, which would be 7-year-old children, low income family. It's been online. It's been a disaster.
Yeah.
Half of her children are not logging onto the computer at all. And then she calls the parents and nobody answers. So half of these kids that are 7 years old in her class are not going to school.
Yeah. That's really kids are struggling.
Is completely terrible.
Yeah. But many children in India, because we don't have very inclusive setups, actually they are fine because there is less pressure of academics. So staying at home, but without interventions, that's again a big problem. So,
no, it's a big problem. There's no way to do educational interventions with 3-year-olds over a computer. That does not work.
Absolutely.
There's some things that we're learning. Fortunately, right here where I live, there's a little nursery school, and they've got it back open. And it's really nice to see the little kids out there playing, but there's still a lot of families afraid to have their kid go there. I think it's just awful for young children to not get the socialization they need to be getting.
Absolutely.
They've got to learn that. The other thing I'm concerned about, and I want to talk about, is I talked to a doctor recently, an autism doctor, very recently, within the last month, and he was amazed that I was able to keep my own schedule, like booking airplane flights and things like that. And I said, that's something I was taught in elementary school. Now, I just want to make sure, if I use a term like elementary school, is that the same word you'd use in India or in the other people I'll be talking to when I'm talking about school for like 7 and 8-year-olds?
We don't use elementary. We use primary years, primary education.
Primary.
Yeah.
All right. I'll make sure I call it primary. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. I just I know words are slightly different.
Yeah.
Like that's primary school.
Primary school
would be the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was really surprised that I didn't have executive functions. I can keep my schedule. Well, keeping a schedule is something we need to teach kids.
Yes. Yes.
That needs to be taught to kids, and being on time. I was taught to be on time.
So who
And
had
that,
been the person in your life who actually kind of, uh,
well, there were different people at different points in my life. I mean,
okay.
starting with my mother, of course. She had a really good sense of how hard to push me. Then I had a really good early educational speech teacher. When I was 2, 3, 4 years old, I had a wonderful primary school teacher when I was I would have been 8. I didn't know how to read, and mother taught me how to read with phonics because sight words didn't work for me. I had a fabulous science teacher when I was in high school. And then there were some good people in the cattle industry that helped me. There was a former Marine Corps captain who had seen my drawings and seeked me out to design projects for him when he was just starting his little construction company. And we built projects together. And so there were a number of people along the way that were very helpful. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of good teachers.
Yeah.
It is just so important.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that, but it's hard to get those teachers, Another thing, Temple, I just want to let you know that in India, we don't have inclusive setups. There are very less schools who takes children with special needs.
Well, one of the problems is lumping all of the special needs together. Okay, a child that's in a wheelchair, that's a very different thing than a child that has autism and maybe nonverbal.
Yeah.
Those are totally different things. And that child that's in the wheelchair, let's say his legs are crippled, he needs to be in a regular classroom.
Yeah.
He can do the regular work.
Yeah.
We have some of the same problem of taking all the disabilities and just putting them together.
Yes.
Well, that's sort of like mixing up apples and oranges.
Yes.
Hi, ma'am.
They are
Sorry
very
for interrupt you. So just now we are going to start this webinar. Okay, participants are already waiting, and now I'm going to start.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am. I have admitted the all participate in this webinar. So continue, please.
Okay. So good morning, Temple. Welcome once again.
It's really good to be here.
It's our absolute honor to have you with us again. And welcome to all the participants, parents, professionals who are joining us today again to have a conversation with Temple. We would appreciate if you can give us the questions. We have some of the questions beforehand, and we would love to hear from Temple, and if we can try to make it an interactive, right, Temple?
Okay, good. Now I don't see anything coming up on the chat here, so you're going to read me the questions.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay, because I don't. The problem is that every country, the Zoom is slightly different.
Absolutely. So I would read the chat. I will.
All right, that's fine because I'm not seeing the chat. So
yeah, that's absolutely okay. So Temple, I would love to begin to hear your journey in whatever simple words you can, because we were chatting before we started about your journey with your parent working along with you and the best teachers in your life. So
well, when I was a young child, I had no speech, and I had all of the standard symptoms of autism. And I was very lucky to get into a very good speech therapy program when I was 2.5 years old. The worst thing you can do with a young child that's not talking and doing a lot of repetitive autistic-like behavior is to let them sit in the corner and do nothing. That is the worst thing you can do. And what those children need is many hours a week of interaction with a good teacher. And she taught me speech, but my teacher also taught me how to wait and take turns. It's very important to teach these kids how to take turns at a game. So maybe a child is spinning a coin. Well, then let's make a game out of taking turns spinning the coin, whatever the thing is. And then just teach names for things first, like favorite foods, rice. Let's just teach words like that. And juice, just and when the child wants something and he knows some of his words, say, now use your words, and then give them time to respond. A lot of these children are like a phone trying to get a web page on a very bad connection. You've got to give them time to respond. But let's just start off with names of things, foods, toys, clothing, things the child cares about. Okay, computer might be one of those words, but it's often best to start with words of just one syllable. And then you teach them position words: in, on, under, beside. I like toy airplanes for this because it can land on the table. It can fly under the table. It can go around the table. So you teach them names of things, position words, then words like walk, run, action words, verbs. Now grammar, they'll learn. If the parents and the teachers are speaking correct English or correct, whatever language people are using, then the child will just copy that. The most important thing is to get the meaning and talk slowly to the child. Because when I was little and the grown-ups talked really quickly, it went, and when they spoke slowly, then I could understand. So those are some things working with very young children that's really super important.
So basically you said stimulation, whatever is around you, start teaching those things, start teaching nouns first, and then come to the verbs and then start teaching.
Oh, and then you teach them words like, like praise words, teach them words, please and thank you. That was taught to me very young. The mother would say, you forgot to say, and then she'd wait for me to say thank you, or you forgot to say please. This was standard teaching in the 50s. I just the other day talked to a teacher and they were making the mistake of trying to teach a child pronouns. No, that's too complicated. They will learn that just by listening to people talk. I don't care about pronouns. Let's talk, meaning, nouns, names of things, position words. And then as they listen to people talking, then they'll phrase it right. I go, well, I wouldn't say he learned me to read because my teacher wouldn't say that. He taught me to read.
So what age did you start reading?
I was delayed in reading. I got up to age 8 and I could not read. Now you get into the discussion about methods for teaching reading. Try different things. I was a phonics learner. Mother taught me how to sound out my words. And she got a book that a child would be interested in. And there's a children's story that in the US is very popular, The Wizard of Oz, or there'd be Harry Potter now. Find something that the child's going to be interested in. And mother would read about 3 pages of that book out loud. And then she'd stop in the most interesting part and have me sound out half a sentence after she had me memorize my speech sounds. And then she read less and less, and I read more and more. Now there's another child where sight words may be the best way for them to learn. Some of these kids vary. So try some phonics, try some sight words, try some different methods. See, the mistake that was made at my school is they were just doing sight words. And that did not work for me. But learning to read was really important. And I very quickly went from the first primary level of reading up to, like 5 years advanced, very, very quickly. Try different methods. Use the one that works, and they will be different with different children.
And did comprehension came along with decoding, or did you struggle with the comprehension as well?
Well, we have to look at comprehension. We need to break it down. There's different types of comprehension. If I said, Jane went to the store and bought rice, okay, that is the most basic comprehension. Okay, Jane, a person, buys some rice, food. Okay, that's vocabulary level of comprehension. Okay, at least let's say Jane went to the store and bought cake mix and candles. Okay, now in the US, that would mean that she was going to have a birthday party. Okay, that's the next level of comprehension. if you asked, what is Jane planning to do? So let's
Inferential.
start with the simplest comprehension first, which is the vocabulary level of comprehension.
So changing topics right now, Temple, I read a lot that how you had a lot of sensory needs, and a lot of parents have a questions around about sensory needs.
Oh,
So
good.
do you want to talk about your journey of sensory difficulties from childhood to adulthood?
Your sensory problems in autism and also in some other disorders are very variable. One child may have visual sensitivity. Another child may have hearing sensitivity. It can be very variable. And another child may have food taste aversion, sensory. And one of the ways to help reduce, let's say, sensitivity of loud noise is to give the child control. You know, let's say something very noisy, like a hairdryer or even pounding with a hammer, something that is loud. Give the child the hairdryer or the hammer where they can make the noise, where they control the noise. And then they may get to tolerate it better when they have control. I talked to one school where the child was terrified of a buzzer on a scoreboard in the gym, and they brought the child in and let him turn on the buzzer. Another child they took to the fire station and they let them turn on the siren. And when they got control of the sound, it got interesting and less scary. Now you can get visual problems that can interfere with reading, where they look at the page on the book and the print's like going like this. And I don't have this problem. And you can do an eye examination, which may be normal, but the print is jiggling because in your brain, okay, your eye is like a camera, but back here in the brain, I got to store and assemble a graphics file. And the brain has circuits to stabilize the graphics file, those not working. And sometimes something very simple, like trying different pale colored papers. Like, for example, right here, I've got some light blue Post-it notes. So maybe trying printing the book, or here on Thinking in Pictures, I've got pale lavender. Try some printing the reading material on some different pale colored papers. Sometimes that works and some kids that are just labeled dyslexic, that have no autism, this is sometimes helpful. And it's a very easy thing to do, and it sometimes works. But then you have the individuals that do not learn to talk. And some of these live in a sensory jumbled world. Okay, imagine when your internet connection is not working, pictures freezing or pixelating. Well, these kind of things can happen in the brain, which you now get scrambled sensory input. And there are some individuals that remain nonverbal that can learn to type. Learn to type on an iPad or some other tablet. Just learn to type on it. And they describe sensory scrambling. And you might want to look at a book called How Can I Talk If My Lips Don't Move by Tito. And Tito's from India, Tito Mukhopadhyay. And Tito looks very severe. He flaps, but he types completely independently. And he has a good mind, but his sensory world is so scrambled. He also can't control his movements. And he types completely independently. So you have a child that's like 6 or 7 that doesn't talk. This is one I want to just get out the tablet, the regular tablet, text messaging program, put it in airplane mode so they can't send the messages, and teach them to type on the tablet. And a tablet will work better than a laptop or a desktop, because when you push the virtual keyboard, the print appears next to it. If I look down at my keyboard here, I have to look up to see the print. That's not going to work. They cannot do the attention shift. So it's strongly recommended to use a tablet. And there's usually lots of old used tablets around. They can be found. They're in people's closets. And some of these people that don't learn to talk can learn to type. And that needs to be, if it looks like they're not going to learn talking by 4 or 5, let's just get out the tablet and start typing. And, sign language, some people are doing that, but most people don't understand sign language, where anybody can understand something you type on a tablet.
So
And
any
at least
specific,
there's plenty of old tablets around.
yeah. Any specific programs you would like to recommend which are good for children with autism to learn?
Well, there's a lot of controversy about ABA and about different types of teaching. The thing that I'm going to be very strong recommendation is that the little ones, 2, 3, 4-year-olds, need at least 20 hours a week of one-to-one teaching. Now, I want to emphasize with a good teacher. Okay, what is a good teacher? Let's say for a particular child, I'm going to ask the parent, is that child making progress? Okay, what is progress? More speech, more skills, dressing, showering, using a toilet, basic skills, eating with utensils, learn how to use chopsticks, whatever. Those are basic skills. And if the child is progressing, that's really good. And a teacher has to be really skilled. How hard do I push? If I push too hard, the child goes into sensory overload, and that's painful. If I don't push hard enough, there's no progress. And some kids you can push harder than with other kids. And it's a good teacher has the ability to do that. And everyone will argue over the methods. I'm going to look more at the outcome, speech, skills. That's what I want to look at for real young children.
So I read about that, how you created something for yourself to deal with your sensory things. So you already gave example. So anything, even in adulthood, the sensory problems sustain and.
Well, some children really respond well to deep pressure.
Mhm.
These are the things that the occupational therapists do. And the sensory integration now and sensory treatments are now evidence-based. They are evidence-based. A paper has come out in the last 2 years on this. And some children will respond to like a weighted vest, maybe a weighted blanket. Another child does not. I want to emphasize sensory issues are very variable. So you can try things like that. Weighted vest isn't expensive, and you can make one and you can try that. Some children, you get them on a swing, and while they're swinging, you can get them talking. So you do a little speech therapy right while you're on a swing. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. But the thing that everybody will agree is bad is to allow a small child to just sit in a corner rocking with nobody working with them. That is bad. The worst thing you can do is to do nothing. That is absolutely the worst.
So you're a big advocate of interventions and to start
Yes.
intervention as early as possible.
I want to start intervention as soon as you see behavior that's obviously not normal.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an infant that is that stiffens up, I was the kind of baby that when my mother wanted to hug me, I stiffened up. And one very simple sensory intervention that you can do with a baby that does not want to be touched is, well, in the US, they have these like pouches that you can buy. Then you can put the baby right here. Well, get one of those and, just have him on you for 4 hours a day. And that may help reduce that touch sensitivity. That's a simple thing to do. And you make sure, I want to make sure you don't drop the baby. So in the US, we would recommend buying a commercial pouch because I want to make sure baby's not going to get dropped. So but something where you just are carrying him around on, for a large part of the day. might help desensitize that. Also, he gets vestibular stimulation if you do that. You have little babies that don't have joint attention. That is a warning sign. That's a kid you need to start working with. Just more little kid games with them, interact with them.
Some of the
It's
parents.
not, it's time consuming, but it's not that difficult.
So some of the parents, Temple, are asking about that children who are non-verbal are not able to express their feelings, like when they are hungry or they are thirsty, or their daily needs. So how can parents?
They have got to have a way to communicate. And the simplest thing is to just take a piece of cardboard and put some pictures on it of things they may need: water, food, the toilet, they're cold, they're hot, where they can point to things that they need. And you want to try to get them, to speak, but then there's a point where they're not going to speak. And then, but there's some that can type. I just got an email yesterday, I think it was from your country. They said that he could write really well, and he was working on a farm. And I said, well, good. He might be really good with the animals.
What age you started to find that you will have a career with animal science, and what age you found that?
When I was a young child, I was interested in science, and my grandfather was the co-inventor of the autopilot for airplanes. So when I'd visit him, I'd ask him questions about why is the sky blue? Why is grass green? Why did the tides go in and out? Because we were near the beach. And he'd answer those questions. And I got introduced to livestock when I was a teenager. So this brings up a very important thing about careers. Students get interested in things they get exposed to. And that's why it's important when children are in primary school to be doing lots of different things. I did woodworking, cooking, sewing, art. Those were my favorite classes. And I think it's very important that schools keep those classes. If you're not exposed to something, there's no way that you can get interested in it.
So Temple, another unfortunate thing in India, we don't have those subjects in high school. So I think that's something, if people from school and we all can advocate having cooking, having life skills in a high school. In our country,
you have to have life skills, because I was shocked. I just did an interview a few days ago with a doctor, a prominent autism doctor, and he was very surprised that I did my own schedule, like booking airline flights. Well, this gets back to learning skills. This was taught. Things like how to write a business letter. When I got one of my first jobs, my employer says, where did she learn how to write a business letter? I learned it in the last year of primary school, was when I learned that. Those are examples of skills that are not taught today. And one thing I learned about the business letter, you always remind, in my previous conversation about the such and such project or the such and such meeting, to remind them. And I get emails all the time. I don't know, wait a minute. What is this about? I was taught in school that you always put a statement in there, reminding what it's about.
Temple, you are on mute. You're speaking on mute. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Touch anything. Okay, I don't know how I got unmuted.
That's okay.
Okay, I don't know how that happened. There's something, somebody wrote about how I handled temper outbursts. I had some problems. I was bullied in, high school, in the older years. In the primary years, my teacher explained that I had a disability that was not visible, like a wheelchair. And so, but in high school, I was called all kinds of names. And the only place I was not bullied was shared interests. I'd ride horses with friends. I would do electronics projects with friends. Friends through shared interests. You know, today it might be robotics. That would be a perfect place, or computer programming. Because another mistake that's being made is you might have a child that's really good at mathematics, and he should be given harder mathematics books, or he should be introduced to computer coding. And people don't think to do that, because you go out to the tech companies, and there's a lot of people from India working in the tech companies, and there's a lot of people working there that have autistic traits, and they are running tech companies. Well, that's because the child learned programming when he was young. And there's all kinds of free materials online for teaching coding, like code.org. You have Scratch programming for little kids. They maybe learn some JavaScript that runs Minecraft. Learn that JavaScript runs the touch screens on the SpaceX Dragon spaceship. That's very cool. And these things can be accessed for free if you have an internet connection. And I've had parents, they get so hung up on the autism label, even though they were programmers themselves, they did not think to expose their child to computer programming, which they could do for free if they look around online.
So many parents have questions regarding the attention problems and the hyperactivity in their children. So what I understand from you, it's mostly stemming from the sensory problems. And maybe sometimes parents are unable to see that as a...
Sometimes it's sensory. The other thing is a lot of these kids need a lot of exercise, and they need a lot of hard exercise, which I know the COVID restrictions, that has made that more difficult. Also, some kids are going to need a sensory break, you know, especially now with online classes, a break from where they can run around, maybe stim a little bit, calm down, and get back to their schoolwork. The other big problem I'm seeing with a lot of children is addiction to video games. And I'm seeing bad outcomes, because what I'm seeing in fully verbal older children is get out and get a job and have a good career, or they're in the bedroom playing video games all day. And some of these children that get addicted to video games, very good at things like car mechanics. But again, somebody has to introduce that. And one thing I do want to talk about, which I've talked about many times before, is the different kinds of thinking. I'm a visual thinker. And if you watch the HBO movie about me, Temple Grandin, it shows how I think visually. That's me. Then you have the people that end up working for tech. They are the more mathematical minds. They think in patterns. They're mathematicians. And then you have the word thinker, loves lists. We had I just heard about a very good success about a young man with autism, and his job at the hospital is to set up the operating rooms, all the surgical instruments. So he knows, well, this operating room is going to get used for hip replacement, and he knows exactly how to set out all the instruments, and the hospital loves him. He's faster and better than anybody else, because that's an example of a job that uses autistic abilities, such as attention to detail. And I talk about the different kinds of thinking in my book, The Autistic Brain. Also, this book, The Autistic Brain, has many good ideas there on sensory problems and how to deal with them. Sensory problems are real.
So one of the parents, Shalini, is asking about medical interventions or the biomedical helps for sensory problems or attention and hyperactivity.
Some individuals are helped by taking wheat out of the diet. Now, the good news is rice is very popular in India, and that's on the special diet. But there are some individuals, they took dairy and they took wheat out, and it was helpful. And I want to emphasize, it does not work for everybody. This is the problem. But some of the special diets are helpful for some people, and they can be done with regular food. There's a lot of specialized things. In the US, Mexican food's very popular, and that's really easy to do because you do corn tortillas and the dairy products you take off of it. In India, rice, and then you put different things on the rice. Dairy is left off, and you're on a special diet using regular food. I want to try to recommend things that people of low income can do. And it helps some kids, and others it has no effect. It's going to be very, very variable.
So that makes me ask you, Temple, what is your favorite food?
Well, I like a lot of different things. I love chocolate, especially dark chocolate. That's something I really like. I love fruit. I'll have yogurt and fruit for breakfast lots of times. All the different fruit. I really like fruit a lot.
Okay. What age you moved out of the house and you became independent? That would be.
Well, I went to one thing that helped me is when I was in high school, a regular large high school did not work for me. And I got kicked out of a large high school when I was 14. Another girl was calling me names, retard. And I threw a book at her. And I was kicked out of school for that. And I went to a special school. So I was living away from home. So that helped on that transition. And then I went to college and I had some difficulties. Now, this is where my good science teacher comes in. I was a terrible student. I went away to this boarding school. I had no interest in studying. Now, fortunately, in primary school, mother had taught me how to read. So I was a very good reader. When I was 14, I was a very good reader, and I could write really well. Those are two things I could do well. Math, terrible. Algebra, still have not passed that. I'm concerned that requirement is holding smart students out of a lot of careers. So I get up to the boarding school, no interest in school. So they put me to work running their horse barn. And I learned how to work. And I think this is really important. I cleaned the 9 stalls every day. I fed the horses. I put them in and out of the barn. And then my science teacher came along. And what had to be done is to make studying a pathway to a goal. Studying is not something you do to please the family. Studying will get you to the goal of becoming a scientist. Then that motivated me to study. And my science teacher gave me really interesting projects to do. And in the movie, it showed the optical illusion room. I actually did that project. So just overnight, I went from a rotten student to a good student. Now I still couldn't do algebra, and I still can't do algebra. And I managed to get out of it. Because in 1967, when I was a freshman in college, it was not when I was first year in college, not the required class. And I had to be tutored in math as a visual thinker. But there's skills that visual thinkers have, especially on mechanical design of equipment, all kinds of equipment. And I'm in the food processing business right now. Our strict requirements for algebra are screened out people are good at making food processing equipment. And when we've built a new food processing plant last year, we brought over 100 shipping containers of equipment from Holland. And this goes back to our educational system. You need us visual thinkers. Making all this vaccine right now, this would be the perfect place for an autistic person to be quality control in the factory, because it has to be made right. They have to source materials for making it. You have to source the materials, the chemicals that are the right things and they're the right quality. Quality assurance. That's a perfect place. I'd want someone with autism in charge of quality assurance in the factory that makes a vaccine for me. I don't care whose vaccine it is. This is a universal thing. They have to be made according to spec exactly. It's just like the surgical instruments. I'd want that person with autism setting up my hip surgery operating room because I would know it would be done right.
So basically you're saying use the strengths and the gifts
That's
all
right.
individuals have. And
use the strengths. And let's say I'm the manager of a factory, any factory. Let's say I'm a manager of the vaccine factory and I want to get it shipped and get it out. And the autistic person saying, well, this chemical is not the spec, some ingredient. Well, no, I can't. No, you can't use it if it's not made to spec. That's something where the procedures in the factory for making the vaccine are very, very critical. They have to be done right. And they have to source raw materials, some which come from China for some things. I was just looking at my science magazine and talking about some of the ingredients you have to buy to make vaccine. And it has to be right. Has to be right. And you get the ingredient and you test it in the lab and it has to be right. And that's stuff that we've learned in my industry in food safety. And yeah, I might get mad at the person with autism if I was a plant manager, but I'm going to thank them for making sure it is done right. Especially for something like making a vaccine. It's got to be made exactly according to specifications.
Absolutely. So Temple,
and I was very happy to see our vice president today on live TV get the vaccine on national live TV. I was very happy to see that.
That's lovely. I'll just read some of the questions people have asked, parents have asked. I'll read. Saurabh said, how effective is multisensory input therapy, wherein we give more than one sensory inputs at the same time? And Aishwarya has asked, what is safe sound protocol, if you are aware of that?
Okay, that therapy is based on a paper. That I can tell you the name of the paper that you can look it up online. It's called Environmental Enrichment is an effective treatment for autism. Environmental enrichment is an effective treatment for autism. And what you do is you stimulate two senses at the same time for maybe 15 minutes a day. So you might smell an aromatherapy, cinnamon maybe, and then touch a cold water glass. Just and you always change the pair of senses that you stimulate. And you need 3 keywords to find the original paper by Wu on autism environmental enrichment. And if you use those 3 keywords, you can find the paper. Now, there is a free version. You're going to see some paywalls, but if you look around, you can find the free version. And it's an adjunct to other therapies. And it's actually something that's quite easy to do. And it seems to be very helpful for some individuals. So you have a lot of people out there selling a lot of expensive services. And the little kids, the biggest thing they need that the one-to-ones with that effective teacher. That's what the little kids really need.
And you're also emphasizing that one therapy might work with someone, it may not work with the other one, right?
Well, yes, the thing you always want to look at, especially when you're dealing with very little children, I always ask parents, are you getting progress? More speech, more basic skills, dressing, eating with utensils, using a toilet, bathing, your basic skills, when I'm talking about 3 and 4-year-olds.
So again, what I hear, what Temple is saying for the parents is that many times what we see in India, parents are focused about the academic skills, whether they are picking up reading and writing, what school is asking, the curriculum. So what Temple is saying, measure it with the speech, measure it with the language, measure it with the daily living skills, whether they have been...
well, I'm not, academics are important. Academics are important, but if you have somebody that cannot dress themselves, you see, I'm looking at, I was very upset when this doctor, this is just within the last week, I was on a conference with him on the computer, and he was surprised that I could plan my trips and make airline reservations
Mhm.
and plan out complicated trips that all my Zoom conferences, I schedule those.
Mhm.
And he was surprised that I could do that. How could I do this executive function?
Mhm.
Well, I have a narrower definition of executive function. The thing that is a problem is multitasking. It's not the schedule, it's multitasking.
Mhm.
Okay, being put on a busy takeout window at a restaurant where, you know, that I'd have a hard time doing that.
Mhm.
I have a, you know, I don't shift attention quickly.
Mhm.
That's another thing I have a problem with, is remembering long strings of verbal information. They say, now, first of all, I want you to go to the store and do this. Then you get back and you do this. I
Mhm.
don't remember sequence. I have to write it down.
Mhm.
Working memory. I've got really bad working memory. I
Mhm.
need a list of the things to do. So as long as I write it down, I am fine.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was brought up in the 50s, and kids were taught things like being on time, and a lot of kids, I've talked to grandfathers that
Mhm.
find out they were autistic when the children get diagnosed, and the grandfather delivered newspapers when he was 11 years old.
Mhm.
Working skills need to be learned young.
Mhm.
Yeah, academics is important.
Mhm.
I've spent 3 years in high school, no studying, and I made it up.
Mhm. Mhm.
And right now, like in my country, okay, they're trying to decide who gets the vaccine. And our governor in my state is going to put school teachers high on the list.
Mhm.
I think that's important. Getting little kids back into school, really important, especially the younger grades, the
Mhm.
primary school.
Mhm. So I'll ask some questions. Lisa is asking about echolalia speech and corner vision, and one of the parent is asking about that. What do we do with child is poking or pressing their eyes, with the index finger? Is that a sensory issue?
Okay, wait a minute. Now we got two problems here. We're asking about echolalic speech.
Yes.
The other thing is hurting their eyes. All right,
Yes.
and that's something that's really bad.
Mhm.
Okay, on the echolalic speech, there are 3 ways that the brain can have a problem on processing language. Auditory processing. This is where the brain doesn't work quite so fast. And if I said cat, they might hear ah. This is why it's important to speak slowly, or I say rice,
Mhm.
and maybe they hear rah, I. They might just hear that. So that's auditory processing. They're not hearing clearly. I had problems. I couldn't get speech out. It's like a big stutter. Couldn't get my speech out. Now, an echolalic child, lots of speech, memorizes a movie, but he may not know what the movie means. He's saying all of this scripts of a movie and have no idea what it means. So what you can do is to take some of the lines from the movie and work them into the real world, because he's got to start to learn language has meaning.
Mhm.
And I would just go through the movie and try to find some lines he's memorized that I can use in the real world.
Mhm.
Teach the idea that language has meaning. So those are your 3 basic things. Now, if he's doing something to his eyes, that's extremely serious. Now, sometimes you can reduce things like that by doing other sensory stimulation, like maybe a weighted vest or maybe swinging, and doing, and maybe this multisensory environmental enrichment. I would try some of those things.
Mhm.
Because self-injury, that's very, very serious.
Mhm.
But sometimes that stops if you do some of these other sensory therapies.
Mhm. Mhm. So another question, Arya Jiswal is asking that my daughter is fascinated with something she likes and then she starts laughing. I'm not able to make her stop laughing.
Well, I can get giggling about something, something sort of silly sometimes that I read about or see, and I just think it's really funny. I I might ask her what's so funny. She's always got an internal thought, and I'm seeing a picture right now I thought was pretty funny that I found on my phone. You've got the airlines don't have any passengers, so they're taking boxes of cargo and strapping them into the seats with seatbelt extenders. And I thought that was good for some giggles. You know, I might be just thinking about how cute the packages looked strapped in their seats with seatbelt extenders. And nobody else knows what I'm laughing at. But there's obviously something that she's thinking about that is funny. Okay, somebody's got a question here. I'm seeing some of the questions. The chat function is not working really right between here and India. What happens with an adult that's been untreated? First of all, it's never too late. Okay, now what I have to ask some questions about this adult. Does she talk? Does she have basic skills? Because I've got to figure out where to start. And maybe she's not going to, if she doesn't talk, she probably won't learn to talk. So I'm going to get the tablet out and maybe type some words, or have a picture board with pictures to words. Does she have basic skills? Let me tell you a good story that happened here about a guy who was an untreated adult male, probably in his 40s, nonverbal, been in an institution, no skills. And a doctor took him out of there, and he taught him some basic skills. And then he taught him how to make coffee and got him a job at a local gas station where people fueled up their cars and bought things in a little store. And he became the coffee man for the local gas station. And he was very careful. He made very good coffee, and he now had a purpose in life. So that's an example of an adult that was untreated, that actually had a job that he could be proud of. And then when he got old, he became the coffee man for the nursing home. So, and this was a person that had to be taught some basic skills like dressing as an adult. Now he does have to be driving. He didn't learn to do. Let's talk about learning to drive. That's going to take longer because of problems with working memory. I did 400 kilometers on dirt roads, back country roads, before I went into traffic. It's going to take a lot longer, so that the driving of the car goes into muscle memory. So I don't have to think, well, how do I steer? How do I brake? How do I use the accelerator? I don't have to think about that. Then you very carefully go into traffic. And if I had not learned to drive, my career options would have been really limited. Now, this man at the gas station, he either walked to I didn't ask this question. He would have either walked there or been probably taken there. But that's an example of somebody that had no skills, no speech, and now is appreciated for being the coffee man at the local gas station. I consider that a success story. So it's never too late to start, and start with something the person kind of likes to do. And how can I expand that?
So Temple, one of the question is, Gayatri has asked that what age we can tell our child that the child has autism? What would
Well, your first warning signs with a baby that something is wrong. And this could happen with autism. It also can happen with babies that are born to drug addicted moms, is the child does not want to be touched. A normal baby likes to be held and touched. This baby does not want to be touched. And this is where you could get the pouch holder, like the kangaroo pouch, and walk, just wear them for 4 hours a day. You may be able to desensitize that. In some of the hospitals in the US where they have babies from moms that were drug addicts, they have people come in there and hold them, work on holding them to desensitize them. So that's your first warning sign that something's wrong with the nervous system. The baby just doesn't want to be touched. And deep pressure is calming. This is why swaddling works. That's why swaddling works. And then the next warning sign is a normal baby will look at people. Like I'm amazed when the little babies at the airport, and they'd look at all the different people on the train. And autistic babies don't tend to look at people. Or I might say, see the bird. And the normal kid will, that's called joint attention. Let's look at the picture of the bird, or there is a bird. That's called joint attention. That's the first thing that they don't, that where babies at risk, I'm going to just say, for some neurological problem. And what you want to do is work with that baby, more little baby games with them, simple things, and try to, that's what I would do. Those are the kind of signs that something is not right with the nervous system. That's all I'm going to call it. The other thing is, don't get too hung up on these diagnostic labels. They are not precise. It is not like having COVID, where you can do a test. You either have it or you don't. Autism is a continuous trait. You can have a little bit of autism. A lot of people that brought us the technology that we are using right now probably have some autism. And we get too stuck on the diagnosis. I want to look at what the kid can do. You might have a child that's partially verbal and he's brilliant at math, but you will not know unless you expose them to math books. And you want to expose them to the old-fashioned algebra and geometry books. And there's some kids that just take off when you expose them to that stuff. There's free things online like Khan Academy. I think that was started by somebody from India. Khan Academy. Code.org. There's all kinds of free stuff online. But you have to expose children to things. Otherwise, you don't know what skills they might have if you do not expose them.
So Temple, we would like some of the parents to ask questions directly to you. So we will open the forum if you have.
Yeah, and that's just fine. The problem is the chat function's not working right. I see a chat and then it disappears.
I think they can ask the question. We'll unmute them. But two questions which I have, Mr. Rajesh and Arya Jaiswal talked about sleep and the eating problems.
Okay, so, sleep problems are common. That is common. And I still have a certain amount of sleep problems. And the rule mother had, and this worked for me, is I don't care if you stay up all night, but you have to be on the bed with only the reading light on and no noise. And then you've got to get up the next day. So what would tend to happen is I would, stay up late one night, be really tired. The next night I'd go to bed. That was the rule. I could not run around the house. I could not bother other people. I could have the reading light on and read all I wanted and had to be quiet. And that was just a very clear rule that they had, and that worked for me. Picky eating. Okay, it's important to give the child some choices. I talk a lot of times about stretching a child. A lot of moms are too overprotective. I'm seeing too many children that do not learn basic skills like shopping. They are a teenager and they have never gone in a store and bought something. Well, that's ridiculous. I was taught money when I was 7 years old. I got a little allowance. And if I wanted a certain little airplane, I had to save for it. I was learning at a very young age. And they got to learn that. So on the food, we can give, I think it's okay for a child to have a few things they just despise, and we're not going to make them eat it. For me, it's raw eggs. No. And I was never forced to eat any egg that wasn't cooked right. But then other things, we're going to have some. That's an issue. And I was always, eat a little bit. One of the things that can help on some of the food problems is get the child involved in food preparation. Okay, out in the kitchen, you can play with it all you want. We don't play with food in the dining room table. That's not manners. But out in the kitchen, we can play with it. You can do stuff with it. And sometimes when you get them involved in food preparation, now one of the foods that children hate in the US is broccoli. And we had a president that hated broccoli too a long time ago. He said, that's not going to get served on Air Force One. Ugh, I hate broccoli. I don't know, that's like 20 years ago, but So what do we do about hating broccoli, for example? Get them involved in cutting it up and preparing it. And sometimes as they get more familiar with it, then they're willing to try it. Maybe think of some different ways you can cook the thing they hate, and let them get more familiar with it. The other thing I think is important is giving a child some limited choices. You could do this activity or that activity. Always having some choices. Okay, mask wearing. That's been an issue. Give the child some choices of masks. You're going to have to wear one, but you can have a choice of the one that you're going to wear. You see, and giving them choice gives them some control, and then they'll be better about the mask. There's problems with itchy clothing. Well, the worst itchy clothing, we're not going to make them wear that. Wool against my skin, that's not going to happen. And then we get into some problems with school uniforms in cold climates. And this is something we do have to make some adjustments with. But the kid that won't wear anything and it's just sweatshirts, no, or t-shirts, no, we're going to have some choices, and I'm giving them some choices of masks to wear or certain shirts to wear. That gives them some control. That's important, to give some limited choices of some clothing.
So that's great. That's great advice, giving them limited choices, transition them from one thing to another. Many parents are talking about the regression in children with autism. So do you want to, like, they were typical till 2 or 2.5 years and suddenly they had a seizure, or they just regressed in their...
Well, you get some kids that regress, and that happens. And in some instances, it is a form of epilepsy when they regress. Not in all cases, but there's some where epilepsy is involved in it. And I was not one of the regressive ones. My speech came in slowly, and then I kept my speech, and I had no signs of epilepsy. And the problem with some of these epilepsies, they're very difficult to diagnose because the child's going to pull the wires off their head that you need to use to diagnose it. And then if you give them sedatives, so they won't pull the wires off, it interferes with the EEG, is not going to be accurate. And if a child that regresses, a lot of staring spells, there are a few cases where you try an epilepsy medicine and it might be helpful. And if it worked, you'd know right away if it worked. But the problem is it's so variable. But sometimes an epilepsy medicine might work. And I talk about medications in my book, The Way I See It. The way I see it, I talk about medications. I also talk about them in Thinking in Pictures. And even though it's 25 years old, the stuff is still accurate. A lot of these things have not changed all that much. But there's some where that regression is a form of epilepsy. And I would recommend going to a very good neurologist if you have a child that's epileptic. Very good neurologist that's skilled in the type, not the conventional grand mal seizure epilepsy, but these other little epilepsies, the kind of strange ones.
So Temple, parents are still asking the questions about the vaccination, MMR vaccination.
Oh yeah, that issue. The problem was a lot of this stuff, it's just turned totally into a political issue. That is the problem. I would recommend that you do searches on Google Scholar. Let me tell you how to look up scientific articles, and you can look this stuff up for yourself. You go onto Google, you type in Google Scholar. You'll see a link that says Google Scholar. You click on that. That takes you off the regular internet, and then you go into the scientific internet. And you can look at things. And what's happened with some of these issues, they become so politicized that I'm just going to back off from them.
Okay. So Reena Nair wants to ask a question. Shiv, can you unmute her? She wants to ask a question directly.
Sure, ma'am.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, Reena Nair. Now you are on mute. Please ask your question.
Yes. Hi, ma'am. I want to ask about the language development in autistic kids.
Okay.
So, for example, my child has words, he has the need-based language, but he does not communicate. So how
Well,
to,
there's some kids that don't, there's kind of like on language development, you've got ones that get full language and then back and forth conversation. Then you get some that are just a few words, and then you get some that are nonverbal. Now, what I like to try with him is let's try to teach some typing on the iPad or an Android tablet or some other tablet you might have that has a virtual keyboard and the print appears next to keyboard. Let's see if he can learn to write on the tablet computer, because some of these kids are better at writing than they are at talking, and that's something you can try.
okay.
And it's important that you use a tablet because of the attention shift problem. You see, I never learned to type properly. So when I type, I'm down here doing like that, and he needs to be able to, and the print's appearing up here somewhere.
Yeah.
So you use a tablet for this. It's really important. And I would just try that and start teaching him how to type some words for, some of his favorite things.
Okay. Okay.
And it might be helpful, it might not, but there's some that don't progress beyond just a few words, like requesting things. Now, the next thing I'm going to ask you, is there anything that your child's good at doing? What's he good at doing?
Sorry?
Does he have any skills that he's good at?
Yeah, he
Art?
loves music. He
Okay.
sings a lot.
Okay.
But he's just 8 years, so he sings the Bollywood songs.
Okay.
Other than that, he sometimes kind of sings some music. I mean, that has no meaning for me. I mean, I cannot understand what he's singing, but he's singing.
But he's singing, but he's not singing the words to the song.
Correct.
Where you could.
Correct.
Well, the
Some
reason
music
why
core.
he's just doing the tune is he's probably not hearing the words to the songs clearly.
Okay.
Like if you said, okay, if I say rice, rice, okay, that's saying it slowly. He might be hearing that might be all he's hearing, because you've got auditory processing problems. And that's where there are some individuals that they can learn to write by typing.
Okay.
And I would start introducing, he likes Bollywood movies. Maybe start learning the names of some of the characters. But I'd start off with easy, simple words like rice.
Okay.
And just because there's some individuals that cannot talk, but typing. And we've had a controversy about facilitated communication. And eventually he has to learn how to type independently. And then I talked about Tito Makapadahe. How can I talk if my lips don't move? He types completely independently. I have met him. And he'll type very fast a sentence and then get up and run around. And there's no way he could have been cued. You see, that's the thing. You got to make sure that that person's the author. But there are some, and we have some documented ones in the US, is Tito, Carly, and there's also the Japanese boy, fall down 5 times, get the reason I jump, and then fall down 5 times, get up 6 times. And I like to have them use the iPad. Some others will just use an alphabet card.
Okay.
But that's difficult for other people to follow that.
So
But there's some who
basically,
won't learn to type, but let's look at things that he can learn to do. Because after all, the coffee man that I learned about, he doesn't talk, but he makes really good coffee and people appreciate it. And he cleans the coffee pot.
okay, we will take few more questions. Siddharth wants to come and ask a question. Shiv, can you unmute him?
Okay.
In the meantime, while he unmutes, Shalini Singh, Siddharth, and Bharati D'Souza, if you can unmute them one by one.
Hi, Siddharth, now you're on mute.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
I have got an autistic child and he's 10 years now. That I don't know whether it's a behavior issue or a sensory issue. He loves to play with bottles. And the main trouble is he likes in the sense that he likes cute and nice ones. He won't go and pick every bottle he sees around. And now it has come to a situation where even he goes to my neighbor's house and he gets bottles from there.
Well,
So it's
the
like
thing is,
he keeps on playing with bottle in the sense he will keep take water in the bottle, he will pour it off, he may pour some milk or some curd or some turmeric, he will put some turmeric powder in it, he will play with the bottle, again he will wash it off, again he will take water. So I don't know whether it's a behavior issue or a sensory issue. So how, I don't know how to manage the same, or if I manage and if I stop him, will it
well,
affect
he
him in
likes,
an
okay,
advanced manner?
so what he's doing is taking bottles and putting water in them and playing with them.
Yeah, he will take whatever leaves he gets or whatever papers he gets or sees around or whatever thing he gets, especially if it's colored, like turmeric powder, chili powder, which is bit colored. All those things he will take it, he will put it in the water, he will just shake it, he will just play it, he will throw it off. Whatever bottle he gets, like especially he's obsessed with like sanitizer bottle, small cute bottles or shampoo bottles.
Okay.
It has come to issue where he's wasting a lot of water, he's going on playing with the same. So I don't know how to manage it, and will it
Well,
affect
maybe
him in
he
a
needs to
different
get
way?
maybe he needs to get a job washing dishes. Then he's going to
Okay,
get to play water
I'm
with
trying
water
it.
all the time. No, but I mean
Yeah, I will try.
seriously, you can take something like that he likes, and the other thing he's got to learn is that he can't go to other people's houses. We had a case here where a boy he liked the box that's on the outside of the house for the internet connection and the TV connection. And he was taking these from other people's houses and breaking their internet connection. And the mom didn't know what to do. And I said, buy him some of those boxes. And then you're not allowed to touch other people's boxes, only your own. So she went out and bought internet connection boxes that go on the side of a house. And that solved that problem.
Mhm. Mhm.
I will try with washing dishes for sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Shalini Singh,
Thank
Shiv,
you.
can
Have
you? Thanks. Shalini, can you, Shiv, can you unmute Shalini, please?
Ma'am, one is Shalini Sharma and one is Shalini Singh.
Shalini Singh.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear that. Maybe you could repeat.
Yes.
Hi,
Can I
Shalini.
repeat?
Yes.
Yes.
The,
So,
the
ma'am,
sound is breaking up. I can't.
are you able to hear now, ma'am?
Okay, that's better.
Yeah. So what a privilege today to be able to listen to you live, ma'am. And you are somebody who has given life to so many of us, so much of hope. And ma'am, this is in regard to my son, who is 14 years old in the spectrum, a very bright young child, has been doing good academically, otherwise also. Life skills, when you were talking about, quite good. He can survive on his own at this age,
Okay,
at this.
good.
Yeah.
Good.
So and when you were talking about the early intervention, everything, I have sort of done everything with the intrinsic motivation and people around me helping me. So I stand pretty good, ma'am. The
Sounds
question
good.
I have now, yeah. So he's a very social child. He loves going out, meeting people. But lately what I see is, because he doesn't get the reciprocation from his peer age, because he's 14 now, and definitely there is a lack in the social skills. The communication skills are good, but to be able to sustain a conversation, to be able to have a pause sometimes doesn't happen when the peer group doesn't give you that much of accommodation. So what is happening now, he hangs out with people who are not his age, predominantly adults. So should it be a problem for me?
That's normal. And the thing is, socializing with teenagers is not a life skill I need, because
Yeah,
I
I
don't
know.
have to. When I go in the work world, I only socialize with adults. And I the thing I want to look at is, where are his academic skills? What's he good at?
Okay. So he's very good in academics. He has a photographic memory. He remembers the phone numbers of at least 200 people right now.
Okay.
So the reason I was asking is because I have been able to bring him to this level, and he's doing really good for his condition. the only concern of a mother who has had many heartbreaks, because when he would go and approach a child of his age, they would never reciprocate, and he'll come back feeling very, very sad, crying. So now what happens is, when people approach him and when he sees that he doesn't get reciprocation from them, so he just brushes them aside. He doesn't want to go and meet them, and I'm
Okay, now
pretty
let's
happy
go.
now.
Now, where he may get friends, and this is where I got friends at that age, is the shared interest. Computer programming. For me, it was horses or electronics. He's old enough now to get a job. And I think I think it's important to learn working skills before he graduates from high school. So he needs to start doing a job where you're doing something for somebody. Okay, what are his skills, so I can figure out where maybe he ought to end up? Because socializing with teenagers, let's just forget that. He can just start doing stuff with adults. So what's he good at?
So he's very good in mathematics, very good with numbers, blessed with numbers, yes.
All right, has anybody
making,
introduced computer programming to him?
He's too good in computers. He's too good in mobile. He helps us, in fact.
And what coding can he do? Does he know any programs?
We have not started with coding. No.
Well, he needs to be introduced to things like JavaScript, Python. These are the programs that grown-ups use to make the technology that we're on now. He needs to be introduced to computer programming, and he may be able to go right into your tech industry and bang their door, and they are hiring.
Yes.
And he needs to be introduced. I'm not talking about fixing problems with Zoom. I'm talking about learning how to do the coding that makes Zoom work.
Okay.
And,
so I have one more question.
And you need to find somebody in the tech industry. They can start teaching him some coding, because he may be very good at it. But the problem is he's not been exposed to doing computer coding. And he'll have lots of computer coding friends if he's really good at it. And then we can forget about other teenagers.
Okay. So my last question. Can I ask one more thing? So this is only in context to learning the nuances. When you're exposed to the peer group, there are a few nuances you learn. And when you're not with them, so I
don't pick up the nuances. One of the reasons why I talk so much about career is because career has given my life meaning. Okay, I've been at home. I'm now back on the drawing board. I just laid out a veterinary clinic. Career makes things meaningful for me.
Getting it, yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I push it. And he's going to get, if he learns coding, we got to figure out, do you have any friends that are in the computer industry? And
it's my husband himself. It's my husband himself. So
what does he do? What does your husband do in the computer industry?
He's a computer engineer.
Well, let's teach your son computer engineering. You see, this is the problem I see all the time. A parent that's in the field and doesn't think to teach their child computer programming or computer engineering. And the advantage of this field is, it isn't like having a child going to dangerous factory. Let's teach this kid computer engineering. Let's learn some coding and get him ready for the tech industry. And that's where you're going to get friends. That's what you need to do. And we can forget about teenagers. I don't like
that's a wonderful thing. Yeah, because if you meet him, his social skills at this moment, as I'm talking to you now, he can book a ticket for himself anywhere in the globe, and he can travel. He can take Ola. He can take Uber. He's such a smart boy. And the money management.
Let's start learning. Let's start learning some work skills, and he can learn some coding, and he can help your husband with his work. But he also needs to learn to work outside the family, to learn some working skills. So even if it's just a job working in a store for a few hours a week, because you have to learn how to work where somebody else is the boss outside the family. That's really, really important. No, let's get this kid ready for the tech industry. And we don't have to socialize with teenagers, because to me, the most interesting thing to do is to talk about technical stuff. I love to talk about building stuff, like talking about quality assurance in a vaccine factory. To me, that's super interesting. That's kind of stuff I like to talk about.
Mhm.
And it's also
Sorry.
stuff that's very important stuff to do too. That's another reason why I like to talk about that, because it'd be the perfect job for somebody on the spectrum. All the raw materials coming in, I got to inspect them and make sure they are right.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we take two more questions?
Yes,
10 to 12
certainly.
already.
Absolutely.
That Bharti is there in the line, and then Hema. Can we quickly ask the questions?
Bharti, now you're on mute. Please ask your question.
Okay, so my question actually is coming originally from Andre Bellew, and the question is, Doctor, what are your thoughts about teaching social thinking versus social skills?
Well, definitely want to teach social thinking. There's a little book I really like that you can buy from Future Horizons. It's called Awkward, and it's in a kind of a cartoon format on learning some very, very simple social skills. I also have another book called The Unwritten Social Rules. Now they're going to have to be able to read, where myself and another person on the autistic spectrum, Sean Barron, there's social nuances I don't pick up. I mean, I don't pick them up now. And career is what gives my life meaning. And then when there's been successful marriages, I have a friend, they're both in computer science, and their idea of a romantic dinner, you like, white tablecloths, really nice restaurant, so we can have a 4-hour conversation on computer data storage systems, because computer data storage systems are super interesting. Friends through shared interests. You see, the thing is, a brain can be more social, or a brain can be more thinking and cognitive. And we need our more cognitive people. You have a great tech industry in your country. Half the people in that tech industry probably have some degree of autism. And I am saying that absolutely seriously. It is a true continuous trait. So let's get this kid out here. And I'd like a little bit of work in a store, because he's got to learn just some, you got to be there on time and get it done skills, and to get the kid into programming. Another question came up on danger. I saw briefly on the chat. How do I teach a kid about danger? When I was about 7 years old, maybe 6 years old, we were out for a walk, and a little animal called a squirrel had been run over by a car. And it was explained to me, this is why you don't want to get hit by a car. Because it was very obvious to me that this animal that was squashed on the road was damaged beyond repair. And that was just what I call a teachable moment. And that's another concept I use. Use teachable moments. Let's say we're at the table and your child takes a huge handful of rice and just starts doing that. Instead of screaming no, say use the utensil. In other words, give the instruction instead of saying no. And maybe at the dinner table, there might be 4 or 5 of these teachable moments. Let's say I'm stirring my drink with my finger. Okay, I've got my cup here. We're going to stir it with my finger. Well, instead of screaming no, say use the spoon. Give the instruction. And just give the instruction in a really calm manner. And that in children in the 50s in the US, that's the way kids were taught. I call that teachable moment. And that seeing the smashed animal on the road, that was a teachable moment about danger.
So you're talking about continuous learning. Parents can take every opportunity around them.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
So can we?
And I can think at the dinner table, we had serving dishes, and I'd reach across the table, and my mother would say, "Ask your sister to pass it." And then she'd cue me when I didn't say please or thank you. And these, you see, and when I was a young child, the way all the neighbors were, if I went to the neighbor's house, they would do the same thing and correct me. Adults corrected little kids in my generation. I don't know what they're doing in India, but I know what they're doing in the US. They corrected little kids. If I went into the store and I touched too many things, the clerks would say, you can only touch what you're going to buy. You see, that's a teachable moment. that's giving the instruction. That's teachable moment. That's just well, I'm still okay. I can do some more questions.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah. My daughter is 6 years old, and she has been. I have been giving her therapies, occupational speech therapy, since 3 years. Now her understanding is quite improved. Means she can understand simple instructions. She
Good,
can follow
good.
simple instructions, and her communication is also, she can communicate for basic needs like food, water,
Okay, that's
toilet.
good.
But she just keeps on babbling like mama, baba, she says, but it is not meaningful. Just she keeps on saying it, and she's not uttering a word also. She's now 6 complete. uh, uh, I'm giving her speech therapies also. So
And now I want to ask you, what about other skills? Dressing, eating correctly, can she do those?
she can't actually eat rice and dal, but solid foods she like biscuits and banana. She can peel banana and eat. She can eat apple and even hard things she can eat, but not with a spoon actually. Means
She can't, so she has some motor control issues then if she can't eat with a spoon.
no, not just right, but she's a bit stubborn. Means she can eat, but she doesn't want to eat.
Well, this is where now on the talking, you see some of these kids are not going to really learn to talk, and that's where you want to introduce some other methods of communication. Some people have used sign language, some people have used a picture board, and some of these kids can actually learn to type just one finger. I do not type correctly. I'm hunt and peck, really fast hunt and peck. That's called hunt and peck.
Because now she can show everything. Means apple and means basic things she can show, but as she is not talking, we're not able to understand how to improve her speech, or whether she will speak, or whether to continue the speech therapy.
Well, if there's a point where the speech therapy, you're like, it's not going to work. You always have to look at when you're doing something, some kind of intervention. Okay, what is, are you getting progress?
Yeah.
And you get to the point where there's no progress being made, then you need to try something else.
Okay.
And she's probably at the point where I'm going to try typing. Also, let's look at other skills: cooking, sewing, just other skills, things that could turn into useful skills.
Okay.
And there's some individuals. There's a new book that's coming out in the U.S. Another lady that does really nice writing, and she's typing independently.
Okay.
Try that, and then, but there's a point where you've done a therapy for a year and you've got no progress.
Yeah.
Then it's obvious you need to try something else. Now you have to give therapies time to work, like maybe 2 months, but I always ask the parents of the younger children, whatever you're doing, are you getting progress? And let's start seeing, what she can do.
But now we are seeing her, means whenever we tell her to speak mama and all, she keeps on looking at our lips and she tries to imitate, but she can't express.
The problem is she probably is not hearing you clearly. You see,
no, ma'am, her
has
hearing
auditory processing problems, and so we're going to have to go the not the verbal route. That's why let's start learning how to type words.
Okay.
Learn how to type words.
So basically,
she may be able to do that and using a tablet.
Okay.
So Hema, she has been saying since the beginning that use different modes of communication. Don't be.
Yeah. Well, this is the time to use some different modes of communication. The speech therapy at this point is not working.
Yeah.
Okay.
You see, you're not getting any progress.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we take one more question? Mumpy has been waiting for a long time. Temple, will that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine. And I'm not in any hurry if people want to stay on and talk.
Okay, that's wonderful. So
Mumpy, you're on mute. You may ask your question, please.
Okay.
Mumpy, you are mute. Please ask your question.
Okay.
I think she's not here. So, ma'am,
Okay.
we can
That-
ask from another.
Okay. We can take.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
we
I
can.
can.
Okay. Okay.
You're going to have to
So my question is,
you're going to have to turn your camera off. You don't have enough bandwidth. Turn off your camera and then I can hear you. Okay, it
okay.
should work. now.
Okay. So my question is, my son is 3.2 years. Last 6 months, we have identified that he is suffering from autism, and then we have been working around him with speech therapy and all. He has started babbling, but we have been trying to introduce him sign languages or pointing or something, but he's actually ignoring and not wanting to learn those techniques. So just wanted to understand how, when he gets frustrated, if I am trying to teach him different techniques or trying to teach him any kind of communication, how do I make him communicate? Is my first question. And
Well,
second,
okay, wait a minute. Now he's, are you getting any? He's 3.5 years old. I was not.
3 years, 2 months.
Okay, now he's still very young. Are you getting progress in your speech therapy?
Speech, he has started babbling, but he's not making any meaningful words. He just takes his animals toys and talks to them and makes random noises, but he's not able to produce any
He may
meaningful
not,
words yet.
You are talking very fast right now, and you are talking too fast for him to process it. And the thing you've got to do when you talk to him, slow way down. You see, he hasn't. A lot of these children, they're like an internet connection or a phone on a very bad signal, and like you had to turn the camera off, otherwise your speech came in garbled.
Right.
And he's like this bad internet connection. For me to hear you, we had to turn your camera off.
Right.
You've got to slow way down when you talk to this child, because you talk extremely fast. Slow way down, enunciate the words. He may be able to start to hear you.
Okay. I have been breaking the words also into different phases, like one word into 2 parts, and trying to talk to him. But then too, he is not. He looks. He has. At a moment, he had also looked into my face, and he was trying to understand what am I talking. He tried copying, but
you're still talking very fast. All right, now let's just take a word like rice. Now say rice really slowly.
Rice.
All right, that's better. You see, you've got to slow way, way down. And then maybe he can start to hear you. You see, he had, like, you're on a bad internet connection right now. I'm on a internet connection that's just, it's not the best. And these kids' brains are like a slow internet connection. We had to turn off your camera. Otherwise, your speech was coming in all blah, 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 blah. That's all I could hear. Then we turned off your camera and you got clearer, but you were still very, very fast. Now, this is a teachable moment. Right now, we've had a teachable moment on how to work with these little kids. We just saw how we turned off a camera, made it clearer. These kids, if we use computer talk, their bandwidth is really low. Their brain is like a bad phone signal, a bad internet connection. And like rapid movement will make a bad internet connection freeze. That also happens with some of these kids. So slow way down. Let's just start learning some words like rice. Just basic words and say rice. And then, you know, he wants some rice. Then you say, use your words. And if you're ice, he sort of said, then you give him some rice. Then he learns words have meaning. But you have just try that. You see, when I say slow down, I'm saying it's a lot of slowing down.
Okay. And should we introduce ABA therapy to him now? or should we wait for him to grow a little older and then?
The thing is, I mean, they do, ABA therapy with little kids. The thing that's important is the teacher, and see if we can get some progress on speech. And if we do this rapid talking, we're not going to get progress because he will not be able to hear you. And the thing I always ask, if you're getting progress, regardless of the name of the therapy, you're doing well, because the teacher is so important. Some teachers just have the ability and some don't.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Yeah.
All right, we can still do do some other questions, and I'm really sorry I can't see the chat.
That's absolutely fine. I think a few people are waiting. Shiv, can you unmute Gayatri Subramaniam, or we have Aruna Kumari?
Yes, Gayatri Subramaniam, you are on mute. Please ask your question.
Okay.
Yes, Gayatri.
Gayatri, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Hello.
Yes, hi, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And it's indeed a privilege to hear you online. I've been following a lot of your work. I have two kids on the spectrum, and they are both high functioning. The older one is a girl. She's an ASPE, and she is able to articulate really well. So that's a very good plus for her. And with respect to social skills, I think she has been trying to, what they call as masking.
How old is she?
She's almost 8 now. And she, they called her hyperlexic. And I think it's a good thing that she is able to read. And also she's able to read chapter books now. So
good,
I think reading
good.
Yes.
Get her let her read adult books if she wants to read them. That's fine. Move her reading ahead.
Sure. And she is also seemingly really good with computers now that we have online schooling going on. She has been able to catch up that really well. And she's a very good communicator. Like she has an excellent sense of articulation, and she can communicate quite a bit of things that I can't imagine doing myself, especially with my younger child who was nonverbal, and he has a speech delay. Now he's verbal, but he still has a delay. We're working on him. She has always been able to articulate what he is going through or what challenges he's got, even as a baby, as to why he was crying. And she used to say he just wants mommy. So I used to be really surprised, but I found a lot of similarity in the way you were able to.
What is her problem? Okay, you need to ask the question.
She seems very social. I think it's similar to one of the other questions that you answered a while ago, where she's really social. She wants to interact with people. She's very good with adults, more specifically. She probably thinks it's easier to communicate or socialize with them rather than her peers. And one other thing is that she doesn't get it reciprocated. People don't get her, and that sometimes is very frustrating for her. She gets aggressive or has emotional outbursts.
Okay, now wait a minute. Now you've got to tell me specifically where she gets frustrated, and what you see. We have to it's almost teaching these kids social rules is like learning the rules for a foreign country. It has to be taught like being in a play. How do you act in the play? Like something, for example, that would be rude in one country would not be rude in another country. See, those things have to be taught. And does she have any friends who shared interests? What are her interests?
Well, she loves to read, and she loves music.
Okay.
And basically, she likes to talk quite a bit because she likes to express herself a lot.
Well, why don't we get her in a book club? You know what a book club is?
Yeah.
And that can be done online, where a book is assigned. And you see, and again, you sometimes have to do stuff other people want. A book gets assigned, everybody in the club reads it, and then you have conferences, in either on Zoom or in person to discuss that book. And then she also has to learn to take turns, talk, where different people have taking turns. You see, this turn taking concept, very important. This is why we wait in line to do things. Super important to have turn taking, and that different members of the book club take turns. And you can't just go on and on and on about when I was in high school. I loved this carnival ride, and I talked about it to the point where it made everybody mad. Okay, somebody's saying, please allow me to ask a question. It must be really important. Maybe we need to go to that.
Sure. I think just wanted to add on to my second child who has a speech delay. And, I think he really feels comfortable now with the older sister, and, in a way that she knows what he wants, and he
How
can express.
How old is this child?
This child just turned 5.
Oh, it's a real
little, yeah. And we are giving him therapy, and he is able to repeat words. Like, I think he is much more responsive to his sister than anyone else. So she would just for teasers, she used to just give him words like education, institute, and big words, and he's able to do that. But with me or with a speech therapist, I think it's a question of the connect with the therapist. I'm not sure why, but he's much more responsive to her.
Well, the thing is that sometimes a child doesn't like a teacher. Sometimes that happens. And that's where you need to get a different teacher. I'm not going to say that speech therapist is a bad teacher, but sometimes a child and a teacher just do not work together.
Okay.
And that's where you need to get somebody else then to be the teacher.
And is it asking too much?
And I had a really good friend. Her kid was 8 years old, was going to a very good school. And he hated the teacher, and the teacher didn't like him. Okay. And in that situation, it had to be changed. And sometimes a teacher and a child just do not get along well.
So is there a way that we can positively use this connect that the brother and the sister have, or is it asking too much of her?
Maybe let's encourage speech. Okay, there's a connection there. You always want to encourage use of language. Always give them an opportunity. And we can talk about any things they're interested in. Talk about doing an activity together.
Okay.
Now, another issue that came up in the questions I want to address some is anxiety. Yes. Social anxiety. Now, as an adult, I had horrible problems with anxiety. And I write about it in my book, Thinking in Pictures. I write about my issues with anxiety, and I do take medication for it. Okay. And it was really important. And I would recommend, there's way too many medications given out to little kids, way too many. But there are some situations where the anxiety is so bad, I don't think I would have had as good a professional career if I hadn't gone on a low dose of an antidepressant. And that I want to emphasize, it's my personal experience in there. But some people, especially teenagers and adults, might find it useful. Now, the other thing on anxiety with little people in my neighborhood, when we were all children, when children were 7 years old, you then had to become party hosts and hostesses when the parents had dinner parties. And that meant greeting the guests, serving the snacks. That taught really important social skills. And that was something that it was just in our neighborhood. That was just something that everybody did. And it's an easy thing to do. We had to put on our very best clothes, our very best behavior, and greet the guests when they came in. Now it's cold in the US in the wintertime. So we'd take their coats and hats, which you probably wouldn't have, put them away, serve the snacks. Now the adults serve the alcohol. We only serve the snacks. And we were little caterers serving snacks. Now that's an easy thing that any family can do. And that's going to help with social anxiety. Because that helped me when I grew up to do sales calls, where I'd call up a place and try to sell them a design project. You see how these skills can translate. So I wanted to say something about anxiety, and I want to take the question from person's chat that I saw briefly that wanted to be allowed to ask a question.
Yeah, we will unmute her. It's
Sure, ma'am. Just one last thing is, I want to be able to tell my child, I want to tell her that this is what's going on with her, that, that we know that she is autistic. And in a way, I want her to know because she knows what's going on and she can process what's happening and how she's thinking and reacting to things. So it may help her. Is it going to help her or harm her? What's your thought about it?
How old is she?
She's 8.
She's 8. You see,
Yeah.
this is one of the basic questions I always have to ask. Am I dealing with a 3-year-old or
Sure.
I'm seeing too many kids sort of letting the label become their total identity.
Okay.
And the thing that's interesting, when we go out to our tech community in what we call Silicon Valley, and I've been there, the big companies, I've been there. And a lot of those programmers I know are autistic, and they kind of avoid the labels. It's important where understanding the diagnosis is especially important in marriages and relationships. That's where it can be important. Like I had a lady come up to me at the airport and she said, your book, Thinking in Pictures, saved our marriage because now I understand my engineer husband. You see, that's where the diagnosis gives insight. But I'm seeing too many kids, like 8-year-olds, walk up to me and say, I'm autistic like you. And I'd go, I'd rather hear about your science project. You see, this is it's important if it's giving insight, and if the child's getting along really well, that's important. Another question came up I want to talk about is self-talking. When I was a little kid, I'd lay in bed at night and I'd tell stories to myself. And I was allowed to do that in bed by myself. At the dinner table, no. The dinner table, we're going to have manners. But I did lots of self-talking. And I even did it as a teenager when I was by myself, because it helps me organize my thoughts. And now that I'm back on the drawing board designing a veterinary clinic, I was saying, oh, I can just move this over here. I can put a gate right here. I was self-talking. And, I've had other people do a lot of my drawings, and now COVID's changed a whole lot of things. And I did it, and even just yesterday was doing it. And I don't do it when other people are around. I'm very careful about that. But I'm saying, oh, let's just try a gate right here. That's going to swing there. That's going to work really nice. Because it made my thoughts, it helped me organize my thoughts. So the rule we had is you don't do it around other people. You just do it, with yourself. I don't self-talk when I'm in the office.
Sorry to interrupt.
And I've sometimes self-talked in the car.
Yeah, I think
just by myself.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, Temple. I think we'll take one more question. But before that, I saw a question regarding the aggression and the medications about aggression. So do you want to interject that also?
Well, let's talk about the age. We don't do medication for 3-year-olds.
Yeah, it is adolescents, 14-year-old.
He's 14 years old. Now, the thing, there are some situations where you need to use medication, but the thing is, we got to look at what's bringing on the aggression. If it's bullying that's bringing it on, that's not a job for medication. One of the things I had to do is I had to switch from anger to crying. And when you switch from anger to crying, you can have a job. When they canceled the space shuttle project in the US, NASA space scientists cried on national television on the 60 Minutes show. You can look it up. I was crying too. Saddest thing you ever watched. Well, that is one of the reasons why they have those jobs. Because if they'd been throwing tools, they would have been fired. NASA does not tolerate any violence. And so I had to switch from anger to crying. Because anger, that's a lion you don't want to let out of the cage. But you have to look at what's bringing on the aggression. You can sometimes have sound sensitivity bring it on. And that sound sensitivity can cause it. There's also some situations, especially in nonverbal individuals, where there's a psychomotor epilepsy, where they get aggressive and there's no reason for it. They might be laying on, sitting outside, totally calm, listening to music, and then they just blow up. That might be psychomotor epilepsy. What brings it on? You can have a nonverbal individual who gets aggressive because he cannot communicate. Then you've got to give them a way to communicate. You've got to look at what's causing it. Nonverbal individual, you've got to make sure they do not have a hidden painful medical problem, an ear infection, a tooth infection, a belly ache, something they cannot tell you about. There is sometimes a place to use a little medication for aggression, but I want to go through a whole lot of really careful things to make sure that it's not a toothache that's causing the aggression. You see how I'm going at this really systematically. And in my books, Animal Thinking in Pictures, and also The Way I See It, The new 5th edition that just came out last year with stuff on medication. But I want you really thinking about what is bringing on the aggression. Not just throw medication at it, because a lot of the medications have bad side effects. Now, the stuff I'm taking an old-fashioned antidepressant, which has much milder side effects than some of the atypical neuroleptic antipsychotic drugs, which have really bad side effects. Now, there's some individuals where you might have to use those drugs, but you want to use them to improve function, not just sedate them and make them sleepy all the time. I talked to a primary school teacher 2 days ago. She has a boy in her class, and his head is on the desk sleeping because he's on too many drugs. That is bad. It's careful, conservative, really well thought out use of medications. And you have to look, now you try this one medication, what did it do? Try one thing at a time and see what it does.
Okay, that sounds good. Can we take one more question? Or
okay, yes, we can.
I think Manju Tiwari was asking, can you?
Hi, Manju ma'am, you may ask your question, please. Now you're on mute. Yes, please.
Okay.
Hi, Manju, now you're on mute. You may ask your question, please.
I can hear you.
Okay, I don't think so. We can hear. Lisa is another one.
I could hear him.
That was Shiv. That was our technology person unmuting. So Lisa wants to ask a question. I think that can be our last question.
Okay, fine.
Shiv, you want to try?
Yes, Lisa, please ask your question.
Sure. Good morning, ma'am. I'm calling from I'm from Chennai, actually. My child is 5 years old, and she's been diagnosed with autism when she was like 2.7. And I was the one who asked questions about echolalia and corner vision. Now, like, she can speak. Sometimes she responds appropriately also. But most of the times what she does is like she just repeats the question. And one more concern is like every day around 7 o'clock she switches off the lights. So she wants the entire house to be very dark. She doesn't want even a single light to be switched on. So this is
she may have light sensitivity, possibly. That'd be why
okay.
she's doing that.
Okay.
The other thing you might do, she might also be seeing flicker. Do you have LED lights? What kind of lights are they?
Correct. Yes, ma'am. We do have
LEDs. Okay, what you might try doing is go into a store that sells light bulbs that has a lot of lamps turned on, and let her pick out a light bulb that she likes. She may be seeing flicker, and that is extremely annoying, and just changing the LED that you have in the light. But she has to pick it. You say, we can go to the store and find one you like, because for some individuals it's like being the dance discotheque flickering. Now, I've been getting a chat message here from somebody named Manga, who's kept asking to be allowed to ask a question. Maybe we can find, I didn't get the last name written down, but that might be what's causing it. There's, it may not be darkness. She may be trying to get away from flicker. Now, also in your own home, if you have some maybe different LEDs from different manufacturers, you can look at the bulbs, and then you bought them in different places, they came from different places. She might like one LED better than another one. You can try switching some of the lamps. Now, this might work, it might not, but it's a very simple thing to try, and it just might work.
Okay, right, ma'am. And one more thing, ma'am. Actually, she loves music, and she can sing the like whole rhymes of Jolly Phonics. All the 42 songs she can sing, and also she will also do the actions. Like if I didn't teach her like a calculator starts with K, but she is able to find it out. She is able to identify the sound first, the sound of calculator. Like I'm not convinced whether she has some hearing issue or auditory processing issue. So could you please
When she
explain more
sings
about
the
this?
songs, does she say the words clearly in the songs? Can she
Yes.
say the words in a song clearly?
Yes, most often it is clear only. But while speaking, it is not that clear. While
Okay, there's an important thing here. Speaking and singing work on separate circuits in the brain. There's separate brain systems. So you may have some individuals that can sing talk, where instead they can use the singing circuits for talking. Sometimes that works, and they'll always talk like sort of singing, but at least they can learn to talk. That's but music is you know, also let's learn a lot of different things, because music is something you can go and do for a career. People like, you know, there's a lot of jobs for musicians.
Great.
In fact, I was just reading today in the Wall Street Journal that COVID shut down all the live concerts, and that quite a few really good new bands and good musicians, you know, started online, and they were able to make it work.
Okay, right, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Just try that, and maybe we can get Manga.
And she used to act all the time.
I keep seeing a message come up. Somebody's trying to say, allow me to answer a question. I cannot do the allowing to answer the question. That has to be done by the host. I'm not able to do that.
Can we take another question, or
anxiety we already discussed? Okay, hypersensitivity to hearing, I think we already talked about. Take the things that are noisy, if it's something like a vacuum cleaner, and let the child control it. Or sometimes kids will wear earplugs or a headphone in a noisy place. Well, then encourage them to you want to encourage them to try to not wear it, because it can make the hearing more sensitive. But you have it there with you. You can always have it with you, so you have that control. So if you need the headphone, you can put it on. If you're at the train station, that's going to be really noisy. Okay, somebody here mentioned global developmental delay. Now that's the kind of term that doesn't really mean anything. And sometimes, you know, different places diagnose stuff, and one person might say it's autism, and especially with little children. Somebody else may say it's global developmental delay, or specific language disorder, or a pervasive developmental disorder. And don't get hung up on these labels. I'm interested in, okay, what age? What's the speech like? What are the skills like? And, you know, and then you have the autistic person with no speech delay, what used to be called Asperger's. And basically, they are socially awkward. And then when the child's little, their things appear, you know, pretty much normal. But we get too hung up on these labels. You see, you probably notice I'm asking certain questions, age, because I'm going to give you a very different answer for a 3-year-old than I would for a teenager. See, there's a tendency here to overgeneralize.
So basically, you're saying, Temple, don't get hung up on labels of the children. Find out the symptoms as early as possible. Start interventions.
Well, I want to start interventions for the symptoms.
Mhm.
Okay, if you have a little baby that's a month old and that doesn't want to be held,
Mhm.
you know, that's something when you do, you know, deep pressure and holding it, carrying it.
Mhm.
Okay, they're not talking, then I want to work on the not talking. And the other thing with any kind of disorder in little kids, neurological, anything, you want to teach turn taking.
Mhm.
Because teaching turn taking teaches how do you inhibit a response? How do you, you see, if you're playing a game, you have to wait to take your turn. And my speech teacher really, really emphasized that.
Mhm.
Now, another question came up on the chat about anxiety. I'd strongly recommend reading my book, Thinking in Pictures, where I describe my experiences with anxiety. But on some of the social anxiety, I think being a little hostess for my mother's parties was really important training. Everybody has parties. And maybe even the child might go to the next door neighbor's party and be a hostess or a host. And learn that teaches, okay, creative drama, theater, yes. Okay, Red Tudak, I don't know if I said that right, but Red Tudak just put up a question, yes. Plays, theater, drama, wonderful activity. You know, that's another thing you can do.
Ask about art therapy, dance therapy.
Yes, all of those things can be helpful. And you see, in my generation, a lot of these things were all part of school. When I was in primary school, we had our school play. You see, and we had music class. You see, some of the schools have taken some of this stuff out, and I think it's been a gigantic, big mistake. Because then you have a chance to be in a play, even if you just have a small part. And that's something you do with other children.
So, Temple, one of the parents is asking that the child is actually very hyperactive. Ramananda is asking that, but the learning is fine. So, what do you suggest? What can
Well, hyperactive kids need a lot of exercise. Mother used to say, go outside and run the energy out of yourself, and the learning is fine. A lot of these kids today are not getting enough exercise. And his learning is fine, and I don't know how old he is. I don't know how hyper he's being. There are a lot of people that are really hyper, and they go into sales, and they're super good at it. I've seen that in sales for lots of different products.
Shiv, Aruna wants to ask a question.
The important thing in early intervention, for 2-year-old, 3-year-old, well, I want to get speech going, getting speech started, but I also want to teach basic skills. Toilet, dressing, eating. They've also got to learn that, and turn taking. How do we wait and take turns at a little game, and then learning and then getting them to talk? I mean, these are the things that I want. And you can do different therapies, ABA or some other therapy. But the thing I want to make sure is that you get enough hours of intervention. 1 hour a week is not enough. Little 3-year-olds should have more than 1 hour a week of therapy, preferably 20 hours a week of therapy. And if you cannot afford that, then get some volunteers. In the US, we have some very, very strong church groups. And I say to parents, go and get some volunteers to watch the professional teacher and do a lot more therapy with these little ones. So we can get the skills and get the talking and get the turn taking.
I want to interject here, Temple. This is what, as a company at Moms Believe, what we are trying to sensitize parents is that it's not necessary to take children for therapy all the time. Parents have to be part of the process.
Absolutely. No, parents definitely have to be part of the process. Now, somebody just said, I just got on the chat briefly, was biting their thumb. Anytime you have any kind of injury thing, this is where the sensory, sensory integration, this environmental enrichment, where you stimulate two senses at the same time. This is where these sorts of things may work, where sensory treatment may help with any time you get self-injury.
So Temple, the one question Manju Tiwari asked, actually my brother is 14 on the spectrum, and no matter how occupied we keep him, he always keeps rocking while eating, while doing any
All
chore.
right. Is he verbal?
She did not say that.
Well, you see, I've got to get some idea of what's going on here.
Mhm.
And there's some individuals, that very good, they may rock.
Mhm.
Excuse me, ma'am.
And the other,
Manju is here. She wants to ask the question. You want to ask
Ma'am,
the
am I
question?
audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, ma'am, he's verbal. My brother is verbal, and he expresses a little, but matlab, he expresses a little whatever he can, but not exactly like totally everything he cannot express.
well, one thing it is, he's only partially verbal. Let's introduce typing. Let's get the iPad or the tablet out there and see if he can learn to type on it.
Okay.
And the reason why I recommend the tablet is because it's readily available and it solves the problem with the attention shift that you get. Like this big computer I've got here, my keyboard's way down here below my picture. That's where my keyboard is. The print's going to appear way up here. This does not work, these kids. That's why this computer I've got right here would be really bad to teach a kid how to type on, because the print is appearing. I got to look down here, and I don't touch type. I have to look at the keyboard. Always have.
Okay, ma'am. And what about the rocking movement? How can I curb him from doing that?
I think one of the things you might try doing is saying there's some places where you can rock and then a few other places we don't. Let's try to maybe have a 20 minutes at a meal where we don't rock and then you can rock afterwards. You see, they do it to calm down. I can remember spinning, and it was almost like taking a drug, and it would calm me down. So some need to do it to calm down, and mother would let me do it after lunch, but then we can teach them, well, maybe there's a few times we don't do this. But since his speech is, not really functional, this is where we need to start introducing writing. Now, somebody else wrote on the chat, I saw briefly, that their child's handwriting was really big, but it was good. That's motor control. They've got problems with motor control. And yeah, I'd like to teach handwriting, but there's a point where I have a smart kid. He's now like maybe 8 years old, completely frustrated with handwriting. Let's just get the keyboard out, because I want to get that reading, that literacy, and they can live without having handwriting.
One last question.
Now, I'd like to teach it. I don't want to do where I just totally throw it away. I don't want to do that. I was slow on handwriting. I was the last student in my class to get colored pencils when I was 8. That meant that my handwriting was good. And so I was able to handwrite, but there's some where they might be 8 years old and the handwriting says hopeless. Let them type. And it's okay. One finger is okay, because what's important is getting usable skills.
Absolutely.
And I've seen lots of businessmen on the airplane, one finger on the laptop, old gray-haired businessman, obviously an executive, hunting, we call it hunt and peck. It's okay to hunt and peck. He's probably a vice president of a major corporation, and he types with one finger.
Before we end this session, I want to ask this one last question. Tripti has asked, her 13-year-old child with ADHD, ASD, having puberty issues and started touching inappropriately to women parts. So how should she deal with that?
Well, he needs to learn that there are rules. And you need to tell it very, very matter-of-factly. And there's certain behavior that can get you in a lot of trouble. And there are rules. And they're very, very strict rules. And it needs to be done in a very, very matter-of-fact way. That's the best way to deal with it. Not all, just matter of fact. And there's a lady named Chantel Cecile Kira. And she's written some very, very good books on adolescent. Chantel, if you go to Google, if you go to Amazon, type it in wrong, it even comes up. If you type in autism, Chantel, Chantel, Cecile Kira, I think is Kir. I write it in, I'll put autism into Amazon, spell her name wrong, and it still pulls up her book.
Okay.
and she's got some very good stuff. I also want to mention another thing is ADHD, attention deficit, and autism are mixed up all the time. An attention deficit, or ADHD, and autism share about 30% of the genetics is the same. And autism is a very, very big genetic component in autism. And you get autism rates increased around the big tech centers. That's been shown in Holland, and that's been shown here. And there's a new book out called Patterns by Simon Baron Cohen, that a little bit of autism may be the basis of being of inventions. And they did a study in Europe, and then there's a tech center in Europe, and there's a higher degree of autism. And I get a lot of hits on web pages from around the big Silicon Valley, San Francisco, area. So that's ADHD, a lot of crossover, but there's certain rules that are very strict, and he has to learn the rules. Period.
So I think, Temple, it's been almost 2 hours. It's been a privilege to listen to you, to answer a lot of questions. If possible, we can have you in the coming year, 2021. It will be lovely to host you again. The takeaway points which I'm taking from this session is that parents and teachers play a very important role in child's life. Start interventions as early as possible. Continuous learning, look for teaching moments, and be flexible. Don't just put the labels on children. Look for insights, look for their strength, and use them in a real life skills. And
also develop strengths. Take the thing the kid is good at. It might be math, it might be music, it might be art, and build it into a career. Kids that are good at math need to be introduced to computer programming. You have a big, huge industry in Bangalore on this. And some of these autistic kids can go get jobs in Bangalore.
Absolutely. So individualize,
develop the area of strength. And for me, it was art. And that showed up when I was 8 years old.
So that's really wonderful and such an enlightening experience, Temple. I hope you also enjoyed interacting with our parents, and thank you so much for answering the questions. We will look forward.
Well, it was really, really good to be here. Now, the name of Chantel's book, it has the word adolescence in the title.
I will look.
I think you can find it on Amazon, and you type in autism, then Chantel Cecile Kira, and even though it's spelled wrong, it's a very popular book, and it should Amazon should pull it right up.
Okay, we'll put it on our chat as well.
Okay, and I'm maybe I can you can send me an email and I'll look it up and find the exact title, but it's on something like adolescent issues, and she's just got really, really good, straightforward advice.
That's wonderful. All right, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. We really appreciate that. And
okay, well, thank you very much. I'm going to leave the meeting now. It was wonderful being here at the meeting, and so I'm going to leave. And goodbye to everybody. And thank you so much for attending.
Thank
you. I'm going to leave right now.
Have a great day. Yeah.
I will. Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.